Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Schaefer. I am from ArtCloud, the presenter of today's webinar featuring Alex Mikev. If you haven't been with us before, ArtCloud, now an ArtLogic company, is a management platform and website builder for the arts, where our bedrock is fine art galleries from all over the world that use our platform every day to sell more art. With a database and a CRM, all these things I will talk about later. I know that's not specifically why you're here, but my background is in the arts, and I serve as marketing director for ArtCloud. So again, thank you for being here. Our guest is fabulous. We have had so many webinars in the past few years, and we've added Alex to our growing list of very talented artists, arts administrators, curators, gallerists, etc. So I'm really happy to be doing this today. It's 2 p.m. where I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I believe it's 1 p.m. for Alex in Madison, Wisconsin. So wherever you're calling in from, thanks for being here. Just a few housekeeping notes before we lift off. This webinar will range from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, but we'll try to stay around the 40-minute mark. Everyone will receive a recording at the end via our YouTube channel, so it will be free and easy to watch. If there are sections, which there are, that are a little bit more detailed that you want to go over again, we can also send you the presentation as a part of my follow-up email with information about ArtCloud, information about Alex, and some helpful tips. So with that said, too, stick around for about a 5 to 10 minute demo of ArtCloud if you are looking for a new way to store and sell your work online. And then we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So feel free to use the Q&A and use the chat to drop in whatever questions you'd like to ask. I will review them at the end, and we will go over them. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for being artists in the world. It is more important than ever to make work and show it off. So Alex, over to you.
Great, Megan, thank you so much. My name is Alex Mikev. I am an artist and a current education graduate research fellow at University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm in the Masters of Fine Art program, and I'm a third-year Masters of Fine Art candidate in the studio art area at the university. Formerly, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. Before I came to graduate school for the Masters of Fine Art program, I was in gallery management positions and worked in auction house roles. The auction house that I worked for was Heinemann Auctions, which was recently merged to be Freeman's Heinemann, but back when I worked with it, it was Heinemann Auctions, and I was working in their regional office in Atlanta. In that office, I was doing artwork photography, among other logistics procedures. So that's sort of where I learned my fine art photo background. And then as well, my undergraduate background is in photography and video art. So that sort of informed and built upon that process. Right now, I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin, and yeah, right before that, I was here from Atlanta. So moving on, just to give you a little bit of background about myself as an artist, my works primarily include works on paper and video installation art, and my artistic interests and inquiry include themes related to work as an activity in modern life, such as acts of repetitive labor, the meaning of words associated with capital production, and broader cultural phenomena, such as the experience of free time. So this is an image of one of my artworks. It's called American Horizon. It's an archival pigment print on paper. And so we're going to get into how to photograph and best kind of present your artwork, in a variety of images. So we're going to discuss artwork photography sort of in an overall high-level way. So the way that we think about this is that our goal is to create press-ready images for our artwork. So we're wanting to create photos that show an artwork in its sort of overall capacity and nature. And these images are things that would be used for commercial purposes, documentation for archives, or the circulation in print and digital media. So, this might live on a gallery website, it might live on your website, it might be something that, a collector says, hey, I saw that painting, I'd really like to get more information on it. And you could send this to someone in a PDF. And, um, the goal is for those images to convey the best features of your work and also reflect the time and effort and high quality of your artwork through really high quality images. And this is an example of one of my, this is an ink drawing that I made. It's a work on paper. And so that's photographed in kind of like an install setting. We'll talk more about the different ways you can photograph your work. So when you have your artwork and you're ready to create your images for them, this is kind of like the overall idea of the type of configuration of different sorts of images that you want to have together. So the suggested quantity for an artwork, for documentation, it can be somewhere from like 3 to 6 images. If without being redundant, if it calls for more, you can obviously add more. But what I found is a sufficient level of image documentation is about 3 to 6. I would say 3 at a minimum, and maybe 4 to 6 is more of a sweet spot. These images would include an overall image of the work, 1 to 2 interesting details and signatures, and other multiple angles were applicable. This presentation, just because I'm displaying works on paper that I've made, focused on 2D works, but the same applies to 3D works. Obviously, you'll want multiple angles to kind of show like depth, texture, and other things like that. And technically, again, we're thinking about the image quality and lighting to reflect the kind of quality of your artwork and what you're producing.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 2 people in the chat that are asking if you could turn your mic up. I can hear you okay. I've got my AirPods in, but
Sure.
and I can go to audio options as well.
Yeah, I'm going to switch to Bluetooth really quickly, and that
Go for
should
it.
help. Just give me a moment.
Take in the bullets. Take in the info. Thank you guys so much for your patience, and thanks for letting us know. I assume you could hear me okay, because no one said anything.
Okay. Let's see. Is this audio a little bit stronger?
Yeah, I can hear you a little better actually. So
Okay.
we'll move forward. Please be as vocal as you'd like to be. Cool. We have got a heart.
Okay, that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. And nice. Okay. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Tammy. Thank
Okay.
you, Helena. Perfect.
Yes.
And then transcript wise, my apologies. I think it's actually you guys who need to turn on the closed captioning in your own Zoom. So know that also the recording is available afterwards with closed captioning. So go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
Okay, great. So maybe just a quick recap on this slide. So the overall idea is that we want to have a set of images that convey the key points of information about the overall nature of your work. And so it's suggested that you have about 3 to 6 images per artwork. You could have more, certainly, if your work calls for it, as long as the information doesn't become redundant. But I found the sweet spot is maybe 4 to 6 images, I'd say 3 at a minimum. This could include multiple angles, interesting details. Usually like having there's like a signature on the work, that's a great thing to include. And images that kind of tell the whole story from multiple angles, to really show what like a collector or a gallery or an institution would be receiving, if they're getting these images and then you're shipping work out to them. And obviously, you put a lot of hard work into your artwork, and you want to make sure that your images, which are kind of the next best thing that someone will see, reflect that quality. So we want to use, good quality light, quality camera, things like that as we're photographing our work. So I'm going to show a series of images. These are 4 images documenting like one of my ink drawings and like a work on paper. So these are images that I've used in like my personal documentation or for the sale of my work. So this is an overall shot of the work. And then the next image is a detail shot. So that is like a closer photo of that. And then I have another detail image right after that. So that shows some like more surface texture of ink on paper. And the following image is a 4th photo that is kind of like another detail, but it really is meant to highlight the signature of the work. And you'll also notice that sort of around the edge, it's optional that you can, if you want to add like a drop shadow to the image, it can kind of look like, you know, your art object is like resting on like a clear white surface. So just to kind of give you an insight into the photography process, we're going to discuss like how do we actually produce these images? Like how do we put them together in terms of equipment process? So the main components are, you know, working with your digital camera, working with a light source, and then working with photo editing tools. You're going to want to have like a space for photography where you can get things set up, where you can kind of move around, adjust and position your work. So that, you know, the lighting conditions of the space are important. It's recommended that you work with a digital camera like a DSLR camera. You know, brands like Canon, Nikon, Sony, etc. These are kind of professional practice pieces of equipment that you would use to photograph and represent your work, you know, if you're working with a gallery per se. And then the industry standard for editing images and software is working with the Adobe programs typically. So Adobe Photoshop, Lightroom is also a good piece of software that you can use to edit, but also organize those images efficiently in your process. So this is sort of a background for just camera information. You may or may not be familiar. We may have some photographers in the room, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview of, you know, if you, you know, you get your camera, you get your lights, you get your work set up, and now you have to start, you know, working the camera to start to produce some of these quality images. So for digital DSLR photography, you're going to want to work in manual mode primarily. And it's a combination of controlling 3 main parts of the camera, which is the ISO, which is the sensitivity for light on the sensor of the camera. There's the shutter speed, that is how fast that the camera, when you click the camera, it opens and closes its shutter to let light in. So that also controls like the kind of brightness of the image. And then there's the aperture. So in the camera, there's the hole that the light enters and hits the sensor. That hole can either be larger or smaller. The 3 of those things in conjunction together actually produce the brightness and quality of your image. So when you pick up a digital camera, you're actually able, if you're not working on auto, like a professional photographer will use this combination of settings to do things like control the depth of field and focus, and to control like the quality of light that comes in. Also on the camera, there is a setting to set your image to what's called raw image files. So these are uncompressed image files that when you take a photo of your artwork, it contains the most amount of information that the camera can produce that you then bring into an editing software. And then you can edit after and then compress it into a normal like JPEG photo. So for example, when your phone is, when you take a picture on your phone, it's actually producing likely like a JPEG photo. But if you take an image on a camera with a raw file, it's kind of giving you a higher quality file that you would then bring into Photoshop. But of course, as we all know, these phones are getting better and better and their cameras are getting better and better to use. So, you know, my suggestion is if you want to photograph your artwork, like your phone is considered an alternative option to documenting your work, while a DSLR is considered best practice. So yeah, but it's you sort of have the authorship of presenting your work. So I would advise to do whatever's best for you and your documentation. And then our next slide includes information about lighting. The camera is obviously very important, but I actually think that there's a strong argument to be made that lighting could be the most important factor for producing great images for your artwork. Because when you're actually using your camera, the quality of light determines the quality of the photo that you get, even with a really great camera. If you don't have great light or sufficient light to produce the type of image you want, your camera is going to kind of struggle to compensate for the quality of light in your artwork. So there are a few different options that I would recommend, sort of in this order, for photographing your artwork. Number one is using studio flashlights, and these are basically big lights like you see in this image. They have a bulb that flashes. So like when you think of like a photo shoot and there's someone being photographed and it flashes, those are the kinds of lights that these are. And these typically have what are called soft boxes around them. Those are those kind of white rectangles that you see on top of those lights. Those help diffuse the light in a more even way. And then there's a connection between the camera and the lights called the flash trigger, which when you press the camera, it makes the lights go off at the same time. So if you use this method, what will end up happening is you'll get a sort of expansive, incredibly thorough exposure of light all around your art object. And that'll kind of give you the best lighting conditions to see all sides of your work evenly. The next option I would suggest is using continuous lights. So rather than the flash option, it's a very similar setup and look in terms of the lights, but they don't flash, they just stay on, like basically like a lamp. And so that's another really great option. And then if you don't have photography lights or video lights or things like that, you can certainly try taking some pictures just with natural daylight. And natural daylight is a wonderful, really great high quality light. And you would just want to make sure that obviously your artwork is in a safe condition, and that you have a time of day and a situation where your object can be well lit, and you can try taking some photos that way too. And also, if you are in a studio setting, or you kind of have that setup, I would suggest having at least 2 lights, because that gives you what I would say is like the kind of best like minimum threshold for photographing your work. And then just a few more things about the camera, because when you get it and you're trying to work the camera, there are just things where you may not think to photograph this way, or there's certain settings that you might be less familiar with. So I think I mentioned this before, but using the camera in a manual mode sort of affords the most control for the creation of your professional images. And it's for the reasons that I had mentioned before. It kind of gives you those combinations of the sort of ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture to control your lighting. But there might be times with, for example, let's say you have 50 artworks that you're photographing, and you need to get these all photographed in a short amount of time. There are sort of cases to be made at your discretion where you might set the camera on auto to kind of try to efficiently go through things, but obviously you're giving up some control to the camera versus allowing it to do some of that for you. But it just kind of is whatever you think is best in your documentation. Another side note is for the ISO setting on a digital camera. The ISO setting is, again, the measurement of the sensor. It's like how sensitive the camera actually is for picking up the light that comes into it. The lower that number, so it typically ranges, you might see it something, maybe around like 100 to 2000, like it'll go 100, 200, 400, 1600, 2000, etc. And that's like part of that range. An ISO setting of about 100 actually allows for that in combination with the flash bulb or a really strong light source that way. It creates a very, very clean image because the camera isn't trying to sense things, quote unquote, like in the dark. So it has all the light it needs and the image can be very crisp and bright. So, when I was working at this auction house and I was photographing, paintings and marble tables and decorative furniture and cultural heritage objects, the settings that we would use is we would set the ISO to 100 and then use flash bulbs that produce the highest quality image. And then one last thing on technical notes is what's called bracketing your exposures. So what this means is that rather than taking like one photo of one object and let's say, it's a certain brightness, you can adjust the settings. For example, your aperture, for example, you might say, oh, I'm going to change the brightness by changing the aperture on the camera to a little darker and a little brighter. So then what you end up doing is you have some options. So on your memory card in your camera, when you start going through them, you go, oh, like this one actually turns out it was better a little brighter. And so, or it was better a little darker. So you're, bracketing your exposure by taking like a sort of a middle brightness and then a darker and then a lighter to give you the most flexibility when you start to edit your photos. And right after that, let's say that you have photographed all of your work and you think you have everything you need. This would be the point where you start to actually create those image files that are going to live online or live in PDFs or they'll send to curators and things like that. So you would then import these images into your computer and you would start working in Photoshop and or like a program like Lightroom to organize and choose and select and pick out your favorite ones. You would then open them in Adobe Photoshop. This is where you start doing things like adjusting exposure, color temperature, brightness, things like that. You might say, oh, like it looks a little dark. Maybe I need to brighten this corner. You can go into Photoshop and make one corner brighter, or you say, oh, like there's something in the back of my studio and that shouldn't be in the picture. Like we're gonna remove that and we're gonna add brightness here. Or as you can see in the bottom image on the right hand side, this is where you can actually cut artworks out of a photo of like a raw photo that you took and you put it on a white background. So, you could photograph it on the wall or wherever, if you need to place your painting or photo or framed work somewhere, you could do that. And then after the fact, put it in like a blank setting so it looks really clean. That could also include drop shadows, as I mentioned before. And then just one other thought on this component is that I would suggest that images should reflect the true visual nature of your artwork. Meaning that, for example, like I have this red drawing, this like ink drawing that I made. And, I might say, for example, maybe it's like not as bright red as I would have wanted to. And, maybe someone might say, oh, well, yeah, let's turn the Photoshop colors up just like a little bit more. So yeah, it looks, really, really nice that way. But, what would happen then is, perhaps your online documentation of your work wouldn't reflect the sort of true color and true visual representation of your artwork. So you want to make sure that they're congruent, because when you have those images online, someone buys your work, or you ship it to a museum, or you do whatever with it, it builds trust because the people who are receiving your work, are don't have an issue of your work not sort of matching the photographs that you've presented. And so in the next component, I'll just kind of go through some images of some installation images and some other images of documented artwork. So this is a shot of one of my drawings in a gallery setting. So this kind of contextualizes the size and an overall view of the work. Just the background information contextualizes how large it will. You can kind of infer the scale because there's some lights overhead and there are walls, and there's kind of like a foreground and background to the image. And then in the next image is an installation view from a 3/4 angle. So the combination of the first and the second image starts to kind of give you like a feel as if maybe you were in that room and you're starting to walk around the gallery. And so the next image after that, in combination with the first two, show a detail image of this drawing. So as you can see here, this is like a close-up clear image that shows the visual texture of the drawing. These are each placed like one by one with like a rubber stamp and relief ink. So in combination, you can see the works, and it kind of tells like a story together. The next slide just shows like an overall image of a drawing. Again, this is sort of like an overall image. The next image is a sort of a detail of this cloud drawing, where you can see just sort of the more intricate components and the differences in value, a little bit of like materiality for the surface of the paper. I actually also made a print based on this drawing, like a photo intaglio print. And so, if you're doing a print, you might also include things like, as we'll see in the next slides, you'll see like an edition number. So this is just like an example of another like relevant detail of like showcasing the work, for sale or for curatorial documentation, as well as things like the signature. And here, like, we can see like the grain of the intaglio plate that's impressed into the paper, and sort of the signature and a bit of the paper texture. So those are all things to kind of reflect the quality of the actual object that we'd be looking at in real life. And then the last component is having your work framed. If your work is framed, you can also show it framed or unframed. And these are all just kind of different options to give people a better idea of, if they're going to either buy your work online or, it's going to be in a juried exhibition, what are the sort of different ways and options it can be viewed. So those are the primary components that I have. I'm also happy to, discuss more, and we can go through questions and things like that.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was a lot of information quickly. To remind y'all, there will be a recording and a follow-up email with the presentation. So we have some great questions. I'm going to rush through my bit about ArtCloud. Don't go away. We will answer your questions. I have a few things to add from my own experience as a gallery manager and as an art consultant, but I will talk about it as I move through the motions of ArtCloud's database. So this is basically, it's more than a database, but the primary function of the ArtCloud product is to store and organize your work. So that said, this is where you would upload all of your images. This is where I will place this little bit of knowledge. With all of the hundreds of galleries and the hundreds of artists that use ArtCloud, we have pulled the data on our e-commerce websites that Artwork is so much more likely to sell if you have 4 to 6 images of your piece. So like Alex just went through and showed his really beautiful, very clear imagery, something from head on, something from 3/4, something, like at least one detail shot. I always use the analogy, like as an avid online shoe shopper, someone needs to slow me down on that, by the way. I would never buy a pair of shoes that I only saw the front of, with nothing around it, with no context. Like, I want to see the side, I want to see the underneath, I want to see the back, in order to spend my hard-earned money on it, especially because if I'm buying, $100 pair of shoes, that's different than investing in artwork that might be, hundreds or thousands of dollars. In order to even consider doing that, or if I'm seeing something in a gallery in my town, I want to be able to see all of those images before I even go see it. And I also want to have good access to the documentation for that artwork. And I want to have basically all of the information. I want to know the shipping. I want to know if it comes framed. And with ArtCloud, you can do this. So you can see, you can organize your exhibitions. You can make your artworks into lists, which you can do by series or by medium, etc. You also can organize your consignments and connect with your galleries here to make sure that you know where every single thing is, where it's located, and who it's consigned to. You can organize your galleries. You can build your website to think and talk about how artwork is actually displayed digitally. We have other webinars about this, so I'm not going to hover over it for very long. But basically, when you click into something, you should have a really good inventory, what we call an inventory detail page. So all of the information should be there. You should always have something where someone can immediately press a button and inquire about it. So whether I'm a curator or a museum director, or however, like shoot for the stars, if I'm going onto your website as an artist, I'm going to want to get in touch right away. I don't really want to go to the contact page. Like, you need to be able to have calls to action and calls to communication on all parts of your website. You can invoice. We integrate with Stripe, so you can actually have a full-fledged e-commerce back end for your pieces. You can organize all of your contacts. All of your contacts can be have purchase history, financial information, interests. So like if they like small works and you know that about them, you can write that. And honestly, a lot more. ArtCloud is a bit of an endless pit of amazing features. So we have all these webinars and resources online if you're interested in leveling up your career and getting super organized online. So back to the that's the fastest I can do that, I think, by the way. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top here, and we can start a bit of a Q&A. We've got plenty of time, so let's start. So for Alex, Benjamin's asking, how did you get the raw edge of the paper? Like, how did you photograph that initially before adding a drop shadow to it?
Yeah, so there might be like a couple things we're referring to. So some of the works on paper that I'm using have a deckled edge, meaning that just the way that the paper is made, it has a kind of like a natural edge to it rather than like an edge that is cut with like a, like a blade. So what I would do is I, would put my drawing on perhaps like a table or another clean surface for photographing, and then I would take like a closer image down onto that paper, and naturally that will create some kind of shadow. And so you can sort of alter just like a photo that you took with an existing background, or you can with that edge of the paper, you can go into Photoshop, and with the lasso tool, you can trace around the edge of the paper, and then you trace around the whole thing, and then you select the background, and then you delete the background. And so then what you're left with is just the image of the paper. And then this is like Photoshop a lot of Photoshop knowledge, which I wanted to give like an overview today, but there's a lot of technical factors too. So then behind your isolated artwork, you can put a white background, and then you have like the white background, the artwork, natural edge on the white background, and that's where even in between that you can then add like a shadow. So this is all of like the wizardry of Photoshop. I would highly suggest, like YouTube is like an incredible and free place. You can learn all of this stuff too. So, but yeah, that's the long answer.
I think maybe there's a follow-up mini webinar where we live edit a piece of artwork in
Hey,
Photoshop, and
sure.
I say why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's YouTube is an amazing resource. I also use Canva sometimes to edit because I'm not as good at the Adobe products, and Canva has a free option. They do have a drop shadow and a background remover tool that's very handy. So um, I think with all of these things, especially if you're not professionally trained, it's just noodling around and YouTubing and Googling and maybe even chat GPTing. So thank you for your answer. That's a bit of a hard one without having a screen share on live Photoshop. um,
I will say too though that like once you I know it can be tricky and you're like, oh, like all these buttons, like what don't but like with like a little bit of practice, you'll be amazed just the things you can start doing. So yeah. So it's a really great skill to have.
yeah, Jason also mentioned it. So Adobe Express is free, which I think is a really great option.
Mm.
I hear really good things about it. Um, let's see here. Uh, Color settings in Photoshop, I think we'll save that for maybe a follow-up webinar because it's like, again, it's harder to visualize it when you can't see it. How does ArtCloud differ from Artwork Archive? This is a good question that we get often. ArtCloud was originally based in specifically commercial galleries. So we trend towards artists that are really looking to sell their work via a reliable e-commerce option. We also have a really wonderful website builder, whereas I don't believe that Artwork Archive does. So yeah, we are also a part of a larger company called ArtLogic now, which is really exciting. More on that soon, but we have connections to galleries from all over the world. So um, those are a few of the ways in which we are different. Let's see. Oh, I really liked this question. What type of lights are best for photographing glass? That's from Susan. Do you have any insight into that? That seems like a hard question to answer.
I wouldn't say that like in my opinion, the material doesn't affect the kind of light that you should use. Like I would still recommend for example, like if I were photographing uh, a Chihuly glass sculpture that's going to go in a museum, and like I need to make sure that that thing looks the best it possibly can. Like I would still use in the recommended order. Well, I would actually in that situation, I would use those flash lights, or any kind of studio or continuous lighting. Like if you have like even if it's not like a super professional like photo light, like there are like LED like panel lights that you can like get online for not like a super prohibitive like amount, and uh something like that. But I would say that for glass, I think what becomes more complicated is like managing the reflections. Um, and one of the strategies to kind of work around that, like for example, if you can't help but like see yourself in the glass when you take the picture, there's what's called I think like a forget what it's called. It's like a tent. It's called like a it's like a photo tent. It's basically like a box with like a special photo material that you put the object in the box, and then you just stick the camera in front of the tent. And you can get one for like $30 on the internet somewhere. And then what happens is all of the reflections are actually gone. So it just like you can still light the work because the light goes through the tent, and then you photograph the object and it removes like all reflections. It might reflect like the front of the camera because that's like the only thing in view. So I would suggest that for glass.
I like that, like a tent for your art. And yeah, I think something that I'm seeing in the chat from a couple people is that we didn't really cover how to use your iPhone or your Android to photograph art. I think I'll start this one because this is how I've had to do it in the past. I also have not been able to master my DSLR to photograph artwork for the little gallery that I worked for. So I'd say it's really important to have a tripod for your phone to sit in. So you can get not only a good, like the proper height, you have more control, but you can do some timing, and then you can really fiddle with all of the options in your camera. And then I think that for the lighting, I think you would agree that the best practice remains the same. So even if you don't have a DSLR and you're putting your iPhone or your Android on a stand or a tripod, like having that lighting will make all the difference. Do you have any more sort of tips and tricks for making sure you
Yeah,
can capture?
yeah, of course. So, like I'm gonna pretend that I'm gonna be photographing my artwork, and I'm at home and I have my phone, and I want to take great quality images, and where do I start and what are my next steps? So, um, actually, I think in that circumstance, the most important part is that you just find the best sunlight that you have in your house, the best time of day. There's like a particular wall in your house where it's like, man, like at 2 p.m. every day, it's just like I have this big, beautiful space. And I would say, like, you can find a way to get your artwork. You can like put it up on like a ledge, or like a piece of furniture or something to kind of like prop it up, and just make sure that the work is really well lit. And if you just either have your phone on a little tripod or just hold it steady, and you photograph it, that will start to produce an image that you can potentially work with. Beyond that, I would say it's because what you're doing is kind of controlling the image quality, right, through the quality of the light and the quality of like your phone camera. And then beyond that, it's more about like what are the combination of images showing. So, just making sure that you get like a great clear image at the front, maybe like an image of like a detail. Like for example, if let's say that you're a ceramicist, maybe you'll want to turn your vessel to like a different angle, right? Or show like a detail like a handle or like a certain kind of glaze or things like that. So yeah, I would just say really good light, put it on like against a wall that is clear and has like a good light source, and just get that combination of images to like tell the story of your art object.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I think that we'll take Helena or Helena. You have some really specific questions about a particular piece. We can get back to you. I don't know if we can answer it right now because I'm not sure exactly what the answer might be. But a polarizing filter for the reflection on the glass. Do you know anything about that?
I do believe that's an option. I haven't worked as much with polarizing filters, but I know that people do kind of use them to like affect like the quality of the image that they work through. I've mainly used like the tints to compensate for that, but the wonderful thing about photography and the art of photography, right, is that there's so many different ways that we can do things and problem solve. So yeah, I'd say there's certainly more than one way to get there, and if that's something that works, I would encourage experimentation.
Yeah, I think experimentation is great, especially with, gone are the days of only having so much room on your computer or phone. So just experimentation and organization, and then just filtering, making sure you are filtering, not filtering your actual piece, but making sure you're cleaning up your files. We have actually another webinar that I'll share in the email that I send you soon with continued advice about how to actually save your artworks in your system and how to stay organized, because as we all know, it can get messy so quickly. And then when it gets very messy, I don't know about y'all, but I get overwhelmed and I don't want to do it anymore. It's a lot of this admin is really tedious for a lot of artists, because I always like to say that, anytime that you're not making art or you're not making work, it doesn't feel like a, a great use of time. You're like, I need to be making my art, but all of these things, putting together your artist statement, putting together your website, putting together price lists, putting together, proper documentation of all of your works so it can be remembered throughout time. It's really important to being an artist today. I will not go on any further. That is a soapbox that will take up a lot of time. Recommended mount for cell phone. I think a Google search for this, honestly, like if it's whatever you think works best for you. If you need to set your cell phone up on a tabletop, or I recommend something that can go tabletop or something that can be extended onto the ground. That is what I would recommend, right?
Yeah. And also, like, there's a lot of equipment that, like, there are a lot of, obviously, like, photo is like a very like hardware and software intensive practice, and also even fine art form, and there are like lots of different gadgets and all these different features, but like, as long as you feel like you have the thing that works, and like it works to make your photos, like that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if it's like there's a small difference between this and that piece of equipment. I'd just say, like, if you find that what you need works for you, then it doesn't have to get like super complicated. As long as you have like your camera, your lights, and a way to get set up, that's kind of the main thing that you need.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just making sure you have all of those shots, like from the shot list that Alex provided. It is important to have super clear and visible, well-lit photos, but beyond that, it's also having a website or a place online, whether it be Instagram or Instagram or your website at this point, where people can come and actually see it. So that is what I would recommend too. But we are running out of time. So thank you guys so much for your super thoughtful questions. And thank you so much, Alex, for being here today. I really appreciate your time, for partnering with us to provide this information. You are a do-all kind of artist where you know a lot about a lot. And so I really appreciate all of your insight, information, and coming up with all of those fantastic slides that will be in the hands of our attendees soon. So I hope everyone has a fantastic Halloween. I'll be Fiona from Shrek, and I will be Mary Catherine Gallagher as well. Do you have, before we go, Alex, do you have a Halloween costume in mind?
I'm working on mine, but I'll try to yours sound pretty competitive, so I'm gonna work on my idea for sure.
This is my Super Bowl. I love Halloween. So thank you guys again. And you will hear from me, Megan, at artcloud.com very soon. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.